Welcome once again, nerds, to the news. This is a giant-sized episode this week, so let's just get into the things. In music, we have Linkin Park trolling the world, maybe. We have in gaming and tech, Elon Musk is in trouble, but maybe not really. We have Marvel, the new Ultimates universe is giving their version of Doom a little bit more of a fleshed out backstory. We're going to get to that. George R.R. Martin in TV streaming admits that there were issues with season 2 of House of the Dragon, and in movies, Donald Trump, as played by Sebastian Stan, is the cause of a lot of trouble. And then we also have some Fantastic Four rumors to get to, and so much more in this episode. So let's get to it. So that's right, in music news, we have the Linkin Park situation just keeps getting weirder. We have Trans-Siberian Orchestra has finally announced their 2024 tour dates. We'll talk about that. Skillet continues to grasp at relevance, and Jared Dines has found a new full-time band, plus quite a bit more. I think this is our largest section for the week. Kicking things off in the music section, we do have some follow-ups and corrections. The first one is one of the bigger stories actually this week, and it's the follow-up on the Linkin Park situation. So last time we spoke, the Linkin Park timer was still counting down those 100 hours. Well, it finished counting down those 100 hours, paused for a moment, and then started counting up. And a couple of things have happened with that since then. So first off, it kind of froze at 9:05, 9 minutes and 5 seconds, which would be a code for September 5th, which is this coming Thursday, so tomorrow as you're watching this. And we're gonna have to do another follow-up on this to see exactly what happens, but there's a good amount of reason to believe that there's going to be some sort of announcement. Potentially new music, which we'll get into why that's the potential, but also potentially a tour, because that seems to be the big rumor that's been following this thing around for some time. So the reason we know that it is in fact something on September 5th is because after the countdown past that 9 minutes and 5, or the count up, I guess, past the 9 minutes 5 seconds, they sent out to to Linkin Park fan club members, they sent out invitations to a thing in LA on September 5th. I don't know exactly the time or anything because I didn't get an invitation because I'm not in the Linkin Park fan club, but they have sent out invitations to their fan club, and if you are unable to attend the event, then don't worry, they are also going to be live streaming it to the rest of the world, but only people that are part of the fan club were invited to be there in person. So I think that's pretty cool, just as a fan service situation. And then this is kind of where it gets a little bit more crazy, is once it passed the 9 minutes and 5 seconds, and then it kept counting, and it counted all the way up again to 100 hours. And those 100 hours, it stopped, and there was a very strange image on the screen, which I will try and find and put up on the screen right now for those of you watching. And then there was a bit of a sound clip. I almost said a song intro, because it kind of sounds like it could be used for some sort of song intro, but we don't know that for sure yet, and it's very, very brief, so I think it's like 2 seconds or something like that. So you can't really make much of it, but being as there's audio associated with it, this weird image that they put up there, my personal speculation on the situation is they're going to be releasing some sort of music. Very potentially they will be announcing something to do with a tour. They're saying they're going to say something along the lines of, we're booking a tour, we're currently looking into tour, we're getting ready for tour, something like that. But I will be very surprised if they announce dates at this event. I'm mostly expecting possibly one unheard song, potentially an announcement for a replacement for Chester, because it has been some time, and I would imagine they are wanting to make more music. So, I mean, you're not really defiling the memory of your former bandmate at this point, because I'm pretty sure he would want you to go on. He traveled, took his family across, what was it, 3 states in order to join the band because he believed in the music. So why would he want the music to stop? Like, that's just, anyway, getting off on a tangent. We do have reason to believe that there is going to be some sort of music announcement, potentially a tour, something, but really most likely music. We will be keeping tabs on this though, so we'll be following up with it once again next week after the official announcement has actually been made, and then we will just go from there. So, another follow-up in the music section though, following up on the Oasis tour situation. Ticketmaster is just gonna Ticketmaster apparently, because we have another situation where what is the name of the dynamic pricing is the words that they use. Their dynamic pricing strikes again, because we have evidence of tickets going up for sale in the secondary market, granted, for I believe it was 8,000 pounds. It might have been converted to US dollars. Either way, that's an insane amount of money. That's not quite Taylor Swift levels of insane, but it's getting pretty dang close. So that in the secondary market, but also in the primary market, Ticketmaster, because of the dynamic scaling on the prices for these tickets, what was once approximately $140 became $350, or pounds. Again, I don't know, I can't remember if those numbers were converted or not in the original announcement. But so Oasis has said that they're going to cancel the tickets if they see them get that high again in the secondary market. The UK Parliament has now announced that they're going to be looking into the business practices of Ticketmaster. So now Ticketmaster has 2 countries coming after them for this. It's just a big, crazy, nothing else really has come out of this just yet, because it is all still very much active. So as things develop, we will be covering it again probably next week, and we'll just have to see it then. That is what we have for follow-ups and corrections this week though in music. So let's get into the new music section, and sadly this week's new music section is not a lot of recommendations, but some things that we can learn from the poor music that was put out there. But so all right, let's start things off with a new Bless the Fall track. The name of this track is Drag Me Under. For those that don't know, if you're maybe newer to the aggressive music stuff, or you just never really got into the, how to say this, emo core, the scene stuff from the early aughts and through the teens and stuff, which is kind of my prime time for music. This is a band that was heavy into the scene kid style, where the emo girls and that kind of stuff or e-girls, I guess they're called now, were super into this band. A lot of the guys with the really big hair and the really tight pants, this was that kind of stuff. And they broke up a couple years ago, or they went on hiatus, I guess, and they reformed last year and are now putting out new music. And the first track that we've heard from this new music is a song called Drag Me Under, and it's more of the same. So if you didn't like them before, you're not gonna like them now. This is absolutely not a recommend, though it is interesting to note that they have tried to change the sound at least a little bit to sound a little bit more like what was once referred to as brocore, and their primary vocalist has an affectation that is along those same lines in this music video. So interesting pivot, but still not good enough to really interest me sonically at all. So definitely not a recommend there. Let's move into our next one. Is from a band called The Dead Daisies. Oh, so throwback rock is apparently still a thing. I thought Buckcherry was like the kings of this subgenre. You had a lot of bands doing this for a little while, like the Lips of the Angel band. I can't even think of the name of that band right now, but you had those guys, you had Theory for a Dead Man, you had that kind of stuff. And then it kind of all died out. Buckcherry were the only stalwarts really here. And now we have another band called The Dead Daisies. The name of this song is I Wanna Be Your Bitch. And that's about as much as I can say about this without really pooping all over it, because it's subpar at best, even considering that it's a genre that, I mean, yeah, a fair amount of people like, but is not exactly the most talent intensive genre. This is definitely a genre that you can kind of sleep through and still do. and these guys aren't even getting that done very well. So again, not a recommend for the Dead Daisies. Steer clear of this one. Moving on to Life of Agony. This one's kind of riding the fence on there. So Life of Agony obviously is a band that's been around since, I believe, the 80s, like the very late 80s, but still the 80s. They kind of hit their peak in the 90s, through the 90s into the early 2000s. Limp Bizkit even name drops them on one of their records, and it might have been a live performance actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But either way, Limp Bizkit name dropped them back in the late 90s, like 99, 2000 roughly. So this is a band that's fairly influential. They dropped a new track called The Crow, which is a tribute to Brandon Lee, which is probably a more appropriate tribute to this intellectual property than the movie that we got out in theaters right now. And it's good, but like, it's not great. Like, if there's a lot of things really working against this. Like the lyrics seem genuine, but the lyric delivery seems fairly contrived. We also have the issue with the AI music video. I feel like if you're gonna put this much work into it, why not just get the rights to use clips from the movie in which you're paying tribute to? You're a band that has at least enough pull to know the person to talk to get that. I can't imagine they're incredibly expensive to get, so it just seems like a couple of wasted opportunities for a moderately good song. Like, it's definitely something that I wouldn't turn off if I heard it on the radio, but is not something I'm going to actively seek out. So as far as like, is it listenable? Sure. Recommendation? Mild recommendation. If you're a fan of The Crow, you'll have an appreciation for this, which is about as much as my appreciation for it goes. Anything beyond that, you really have to be a fan of the band as well, and that's not really my kind of thing. So moving right along, our next one, and this one is the one that had me super stoked for new music this week. Shadow of Intent has dropped a new track. The new track is called Flying the Black Flag, and damn, these kids can tear it up. I mean, it's just the fact that this is such a nerdy band. This is a band that is based, at least their first couple records, on Halo. The name of the band comes from the Halo franchise. Their drummer has a giant Mandalorian tattoo on his shoulder. Like, this is all fantastic stuff. And then the fact on top of that they make this incredible deathcore. Like, yes, please, thank you. Keep it coming, guys, because this really made my week as far as the new music goes. A lot of really great new music dropped. I just really was not able to get to it, so I'm hoping to get to some of the new records that came out this week so we can talk about those next week, but don't hold me to that because it doesn't look like it's going to be letting up anytime soon. Anyway, so that is absolutely a recommend. Fly the Black Flag from Shadow of Intent. That is the strongest recommend I can give, and honestly the only strong recommend for the week. Let's move on into tours and festivals, shall we? So this week, tours and festivals, we have a big festival announced. Punk in the Park. Offspring, Pennywise are set to headline, also featuring some heavy hitters in Streetlight, Man of Freaking Festo, Voodoo Glow Skulls, and more. We have November 17th in San Diego is the date and place. Link down in the description for tickets if you are interested. This looks like it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun, and it's going to be sponsored by a beer company, so there's going to be lots of like free beer going around. So why not go see a kick-ass punk rock show in a giant park in San Diego if you're in the area and you know, don't want to get peed on. Really cool note on this Punk in the Park situation is the GA tickets are fairly accessible. $69 is where GA starts before they sell out and go through the roof. But right now, general admission tickets are $69. If you want VIP tickets, there's like $200, but there's a giant VIP package. Whatever, spend the $70 ahead. That's honestly really good for a tour or for a festival of this size, so I feel like that's an even better opportunity. Anyway, continuing on. But so again, link in the description for tickets. Next one is Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I always look forward to the announcement of this tour every year. TSO is a tour that one of these days I will catch. I will catch TSO one day. Their 2024 tour, as usual, it's gigantic. They are taking out, once again, 2 different touring companies. So they're going to be in 2 different cities every date on this tour. So that is, they have a bunch of people involved in this. They're trying to fit basically the entire country into a month and a half worth of touring, which, I mean, can you blame them? That's kind of the only time that metal Christmas really makes sense, right, is November into December. It does start early November and then it does end just before New Year's. They are also doing 2 shows on every stop, so there will technically be 4 TSO shows every day of this tour. There's a matinee lunch set, and then there's a dinner set. I believe the show starts at 3 for the matinee and then 7 for the PM set, so that's pretty freaking awesome. We're not going to talk about where it's starting and where it's ending because it's all over the country. Link in the description for not just tour dates, but also for tickets if you are interested, and why wouldn't you be? TSO is amazing. And then our final tour this week that we're talking about is Escuela Grind has announced a headlining tour with Body Box, Wisdom, and War for support. The name of the tour is the Dreams and Algorithms Tour. It is the name of their next record that is set to come out soon. No date on that one just yet, but it does start October 8th in Omaha, Nebraska. It runs through October 27th in Montreal, Canada. Once again, links in the description if you want tickets, and that's the one that I feel like is going to be pretty exciting. That is what we have for tours and festivals. Let's talk now about some regular ass news, shall we? First up is kind of a down note. We have Devil Driver losing a guitar player. Longtime guitarist Mike Spreitzer has announced that he is going to be leaving the band after 20 years of playing guitar with them. He is the second longest surviving member, I guess, because at some point everyone has quit this band. He was a replacement guitar player originally 20 years ago and has been with the band ever since. In his statement that he made on his social medias, he said that part of the reason, I mean, he definitely implied, I guess is more appropriate, he implied that a big part of the reason is that Dez is doing 2 different bands. The world is still recovering. Definitely the music world is still recovering from what happened in 2019 through 2020. So that, on top of the fact that Dez started up with Coal Chamber again, so there's 2 different bands that he's got to split his attention to, and neither of those bands really exist without Dez. So he said very explicitly that he felt like his music, his standing as a professional musician was part-time. He was only playing part-time, so he was a part-time musician, and he wanted to go back to full-time. He wants to go back to touring. He has this list of all of the things he misses about touring all the time, all day, every day. And yeah, it sounds relatively amicable, but Devil Driver have not made an announcement themselves about the separation. So if they do, it will be interesting to see how their take on the situation differs from his. But as it stands with just his announcement out there, it sounds fairly amicable. He just wants to focus on his other band, which is in the notes, I promise. Verona on Venus. That is a band that he started in 2019 when everything was shutting down, and it was supposed to just be a side project, but now that things are the way they are and they don't show any signs of changing soon enough for his liking, he's just going to focus on his other band and make that a full-time gig. So, I mean, you can't necessarily blame the guy, but also you said you started the second band to make it feel like a full-time situation where you're a musician, and now that's not enough. I don't know, it just seems like he's backpedaling a little bit, but either way, more power to him. Hopefully Dez and the gang find a new guitar player to replace him, and that's what we got on that one. Let's move next into Skillet. Oh boy. Skillet, lead vocalist and bass player John Cooper has made it known in the face of the whole Foo Fighters situation. John has made it known that any politician can use Skillet music for anything at their rallies. He doesn't care. He believes in country over, what is the quote? Believe in country over party is what he said. So the TLDR on the Foo Fighters situation, Donald Trump, when introducing RFK Jr. at a rally, they played Foo Fighters' Hero. There goes my my hero. That song was cleared. They got the rights to use it because they're not just going to use it illegally. That song was cleared when the clearance process went through. The band apparently signed off on the situation because that's the way that works. Well, I mean, technically you can get away with just paying for the rights. But when the band put the song up to potentially be bought by people for such purposes, like, this is an acknowledged possibility when you do that. So they then came out and said they didn't have permission, Donald Trump didn't have permission to use our song, and to which a lot of people came out and with receipts and said, I don't know, it seems like this is permission that you need to do such things. And then Dave Grohl kind of walked back and said, oh no, I didn't explicitly say, yeah, he paid for the rights so he can do, but like, I didn't want him to do it. But like, that's not how the situation works. So anyway, I'm rambling. John Cooper, again, from Skillet, because that's what we're talking about, has come out because of that situation, has come out and said, well, I would let any politician use my music, even if I didn't agree with their policies or stances on situations, because social media is a thing. And if it's somebody who I don't agree with who's using my music, I can come out on my social media platforms and say, hey, this person does not believe in the things that I believe, and I do not support their candidacy, but I do support the fact that they are welcome to use my music as they see fit because it is America and America is beautiful, or something like that. I'm definitely paraphrasing. So, I mean, is there a politician that's gonna use Skillet music? Like, I mean, I know Skillet has a pretty rabid fan base. I've done a reaction video to Skillet music, and I know how their fans react, especially if you're even slightly critical of them. So, like, yes, I get it that they're a big enough band that somebody maybe would want to capitalize on that fame for a political rally. But it's also not a very well-kept secret that Skillet are a very religious band. So the likelihood of somebody using a Skillet song that is on the opposite side of the political spectrum from John Cooper is very, very slim. Like, it would have to have been like when Monster came out, and then what politician is going to use a song that says I feel like a monster as the chorus? I don't know, it just seems like this weird, like, grasp at relevancy. And apparently it's working because we're talking about it here and it's all over the music entertainment news sites and all of this. So, like, I guess I understand why such things happen, but it just seems so silly to me because that is such an unlikely scenario that a politician would want to use a Skillet song. I mean, even the religious politicians, even the Republican politicians who agree with the stances of the members of the band Skillet probably still wouldn't want to use a Skillet song because it's their lyrics, their writing style is not exactly, it's a little bit more vague, it's a little bit more out there. I mean, again, they have one of their biggest songs, if not their biggest song. The chorus, the end line of the chorus is, I feel like a monster, I feel like, right, how is that politically appropriate? There Goes My Hero, that's something that, you know, you would want to use in some sort of like enlifting, rallying kind of situation. You want to exalt the person who's coming out on stage to this music. There Goes My Hero is a great lyric. It's a fantastic lyric. A lot of the lyrics in that song are great for that purpose as well. But dealing with inner demons, not exactly something a politician wants to put out there, I guess is the way to put that. But we're spending way too much time on Mr. Cooper and Skillet. Let's move right along. This one I almost put into the new music section, but it doesn't necessarily qualify, and I'll explain. So, Atreyu is putting out a new record. That would be news that we would cover here in the regular ass news section. But they also have released a single from this new record. Actually, technically, they've released 2 singles from this new record. The first single is too old for us to cover in new music because it came out a little over 2 weeks ago. And it just, for whatever reason, wasn't on my radar. Probably because I don't really cover the Atreyu stuff as much anymore now that Dead Icarus is picking up and running with that sound that I really fell in love with back in the days when Atreyu was a whole band. So, all all that being said, this new record that they're putting out, the name of the record is I'm not going to be able to say this word because it's kind of a weird, Pronoia. The Pronoia Sessions is the name of the record. That record is not a traditional record. It's kind of, so Everclear, back in the day, a couple years ago, I guess, more appropriately, put out a record called In a New Light, where they rearranged a lot of their hit songs, a lot of their more well-known songs, in a style that's more appropriate for the way they perform now. Because they're not quite punk rock like they were back in the 90s, and so they've gotten a little bit older, they've lost some of the aggression, and so they kind of rearranged these songs to fit that kind of different side of who they are now. This is effectively that for Atreyu. Maybe the parallel might be better drawn between Walls of Jericho did an acoustic record, and the acoustic songs that they did mostly were acoustic arrangements of, were about half acoustic arrangements of songs that they had already written, and then the other half was covers. That's kind of what they've done here. So it's somewhere between the Everclear and the Walls of Jericho thing. The Walls of Jericho record is actually really damn good. If you haven't listened to it, it's produced by Corey Taylor. It's a 5-track EP or LP rather, and yeah, it's really worth your time. Go listen to it. Everclear one too. If you like the 90s alt punk scene, then the Everclear record In a New Light is also really damn good. Anyway, Atreyu, this I'm not going to say that word again. The Pronoia. It just looks weird on the paper, I don't know. The Pronoia Sessions is a collection of reimagined songs that they've previously done that were big hits. The single that they just released off of this, which is what kind of brought it to my attention, so we put it in today's episode. The single that they released is Becoming the Bull, which is a single they've already released, which is why it didn't go into the new music section. Anyway, so I think this is a couple of things. A, it's kind of showcasing this new sound that they're going for. Obviously, Atreyu are not quite the metalcore titans that they were at one point. They do still rock, they do still definitely throw down. I've seen them live without Alex now once, just the once. I've seen them live without Alex the once, and it still was a hell of a show. Like, I definitely enjoyed myself. Maybe not as much as the days with Alex, because I saw them probably a half a dozen times at that point, but either way, still really, really good. Still definitely one of my top 20 bands. Used to be top 5, now top 20. That's what they're doing. They're showcasing that, but they're also, and I think this is probably a little bit more appropriate, they're also distancing themselves from Alex. Because Alex has Dead Icarus, and Dead Icarus is doing fantastic things, and so they want to kind of reclaim these tracks that they've been performing live, and so this different arrangement for this music, I think, makes a little bit more sense for what they're doing now. I don't think this is the way they're going to perform them live necessarily, because this is largely acoustic music. It's not entirely acoustic record. There's definitely some production elements in here that would not quantify as acoustic, but that's kind of the feel that they're going for. The other track that they've released for this is a cover of Like a Stone from Audioslave. Brandon Saylor's voice for that specific purpose is freaking awesome. I really, really dig it. He definitely is not Chris Cornell, but oof, it's a close, I guess, a close approximation. Good is kind of subjective, but it's definitely close. I really, really dig it. If you really have your heart attached to the original Audioslave version, then maybe it's not going to do as much for you as it does for me, but I just love Brandon's voice. Anyway, so yeah, that's what the announcement here is. New Atreyu record. It's a reimagining of their previous stuff. There's a couple of new covers on there. It's largely acoustic, though not entirely acoustic. Name of the record is the Pronoia Sessions. I'm gonna get that word eventually. All right, so from there, speaking of new music, we have The Cure is releasing new music. Kind of. Again, this is just such a weird, like, gray area. We have 2 new tracks from The Cure that aren't exactly new tracks from The Cure. They are new songs in the sense that they have never been recorded and officially released as new music from the Cure, but they're songs that have been written for a number of years and have been being performed live as in the Cure's set for a number of years. They just haven't released them. The last time they released new music was back in 2008. So this is the first time since 2008 that they've actually released new music. The way they're going to be releasing this is they're releasing a live recorded record. It was recorded in France. The name of the record is, oh, where did it go? November, live in France 2022, set for an October 1st release. The name of the 2 songs that they are releasing that are the new tracks that have never been previously recorded. The first one is And Nothing Is Forever, and the second one is I Can Never Say Goodbye. So those 2 songs, never been recorded before, now getting recorded, though it's in a live situation, so there you go. Our last piece of news this week has to do with the band Oni. I'll give you the straight up and then I'll give you my take on it because, again, this is going to be another one I probably ramble on for just a couple minutes. So Jared Dines, famous metal YouTuber, has announced that he is officially joining the band Oni full-time. In the announcement, a couple of really cool things are announced. First of which, I guess less cool because I didn't watch season 1. I don't necessarily care to. I like Jared for his ability and kind of his sense of humor. The reality TV show thing that he did, the Musician Mansion, I didn't care for it. But again, that's not kind of my bag. So season 2 of Musician Mansion is still going to be happening in spite of him joining this band full time. Also, he said, and this is kind of breaking news in a way because I hadn't heard such things because Howard is otherwise occupied with the situation with Adam D from Killswitch. But Scion 2 is apparently a thing that Jared and Howard are actively working on. Jared Dines and Howard Jones are working on the follow-up to that Scion record. If you have not listened to the first Scion record, again, absolute must listen to. If you like your metal, what is it, like early aughts metalcore style, so Killswitch Engage, Alive or Just Breathing, also Killswitch Engage, End of Heartache, around that kind of sound, then you absolutely must listen to the Scion record because that is exactly what they were trying to recreate, and they were very, very successful. So Scion 2 is a thing. Anyway, back to the main story here, and that is Jared Dines has found a permanent home for live music. So this is going to be what he does on stage. And he said that very explicitly. So that almost seems to imply that he's not going to be recording new material with these guys, though the rate at which these guys record, I would be very surprised if that were the actual situation, because they're going to be writing new music. Jared Dines is going to be writing new music, and if he's part of the band live, why would he not also contribute to the studio situation? So hopefully we will be hearing Oni with Jared Dines. And now, if you've never heard Oni, we have talked about them on the channel previously. We covered them in new music once or twice, and I believe I even suggested at least one of their songs. So they had Howard Jones guest vocal on one of their songs previously. They got some pretty serious radio play on Liquid Metal fairly recently with the track, I can't remember the name of the track, but it was featuring Randy Blythe and Iggy Pop on the track. Really good, really, really solid track. I actually saw them live. They opened up for somebody, and I really can't remember who they opened up for at this point. It might have been Atreyu, but I don't think it was. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. And it'll come to me and when we're into like the movie section or something, I bet watch. Either way, I've seen them live, and the interesting thing about this band, watching the videos, listening to the music, and seeing them live, they're very talented. They execute the thing very, very well. But it feels like there's no charisma there. It feels like there's no key element drawing anybody into this fan. I mean, they have a fan base. They obviously are well enough known that they can pull in these guest spots on their records. Like I said, Howard Jones, Randy Blythe, you don't really get much bigger than that in the world of metal right now as far as vocalists go. They have other ones as well. Iggy Pop is not metal, but like one of the most well-known vocalists in the world, and he guest vocals on one of their tracks. So like, this is a thing that they're big enough to pull. Granted, with the right amount of money, you can kind of get anyone to do anything, especially in the entertainment world, right? So that's not saying as much as I think some people think it does, but still says something. Now, with Jared, because Jared is all personality, I mean, he's also an incredibly talented musician, but like, his personality is what draws you into his YouTube channel. And now that personality is part of this also very talented band, I think is going to do amazing things for maybe mostly for Oni, because Jared, I think his shadow kind of is cast onto the band at large, I would venture that his popularity is a little bit bigger than their popularity, being as he did a whole record with Howard and they had to pay Howard to do a song. You know, that's kind of that situation. Either way, it sounds like I'm throwing a lot more shade than I am intending to. I think this is going to be a fantastic match, and I'm very, very much looking forward to new music out of this Jared Dines Oni collaboration. Hopefully once it finally happens, we will stop seeing it as a Jared Dines Oni collaboration and just see it as the band. First, you get Jason Richardson joining freaking All That Remains, and now you get Jared Dines joining the band Oni. This is going to be an incredible couple of years. The All That Remains record is going to be coming out eventually. Again, they're not going to announce when that record's dropping officially, but that's gonna happen, and then we're gonna get new Oni music with Jared Dines. So Jared Dines is getting a new creative outlet. Just gonna be great stuff. I'm super excited for the next year or two. That is, though, what we have for new music. Again, rambling, it's music, that's what I do. That's what we have for new music. Let's talk now about suggestions for the week. And I say that with an S specifically because that's kind of the way it's written, but also because we technically have two suggestions this week for music, and those two musical suggestions are single songs, which is why there's two of them. First up, we have Thomas Hogue, another metal YouTuber, doing a cover of Master of Puppets, but it's a death metal cover of the Metallica classic, and it is freaking fantastic. I cannot suggest this hard enough. Once you've listened to that, though, I've been getting a lot into the 10-second song style of stuff. If this band wrote that song by this other artist, etc., etc. Another artist that does stuff like that is a cat named Matt Glocky, and I feel like one of the biggest shines that this kid has done is Bad Guy by Billie Eilish, only written by Chevelle. I seriously heard this, and I think I like his version better than the original. And I'm kind of a fan of the original. It's a pretty decent freaking pop song for sure, but his take of Chevelle writing it is better. just better. And I really want to shine a light on something that really isn't getting as much attention as I feel like it deserves. So go check out those two tracks. We have Master of Puppets by Thomas Hogue, link in the description, as if it were a death metal track, and then Matt Glocky doing Bad Guy in the style of Chevelle. Those are your suggestions for the week. Gaming and tech section, we have Sony pulling the plug on Concord after 2 weeks. We have Elon's X is in a couple of very interesting situations at the moment. Plus, X Defiant is possibly going the way of Concord. We'll see. So, follow-ups and corrections for gaming and tech. We have a fairly big follow-up for Fallout 76 right now. There is a balance patch that just came out because they are changing the way that fire and poison both distribute damage. So, fire and poison are now going to be doing damage over time. Poison is going to be at the end result once you hit from when your character is poisoned, or when you poison somebody else even, to when the poison effect wears off. That will be a greater amount of damage than the fire. Fire will do large chunks of damage over time, whereas poison will be slow and take longer to do that damage. But so that implies that they have to basically revamp most of the game. So if you are an active Fallout 76 player, this rollout means you're going to basically have to re-download the entire game, which is a huge undertaking, but I think it's going to be worth it. Oh yeah, so big balance patch is available right now. So if you've already downloaded it, how is it working? I'm super intrigued by this, so much so I will definitely be picking up my Fallout 76 this weekend because I need to take a break from Mortal Kombat. It's starting to seep into my dreams. Anyway, the other follow-up this week we have has to do with Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. Also technically affects the Capcom Fighting Collection 2. They are now officially being announced to be going to the Xbox platform, so Xbox Series platform. Very potentially Xbox One as well, but I don't know that for certain. I do know, though, for certain the Series consoles. But it kept saying multiple Xbox consoles. I couldn't decipher if that was Series S and X, or if it was Series consoles and Xbox One consoles, because it's Marvel vs. Capcom. It's a Marvel fighting, or the Capcom fighting engines. can be handled with even previous generation fairly well. So it would make sense if it hit the one, but I don't know that explicitly. The thing to note here is it is not going to be launching with the Steam, PlayStation, and Switch versions. Those are coming out this year, which I'm definitely going to be getting them for my Switch, probably not for my Xbox. The Xbox versions will not be launching until 2025, and there's no exact date for that just yet. They haven't said explicitly the reasoning for this, aside from it's not because of, I didn't put it in the notes, so I'm gonna have to paraphrase as close as I can remember. They said it's not because of any restrictions put on them by Microsoft, I think was kind of the direction that quote goes, implying that it could be an exclusivity situation with Sony, though that doesn't make sense because it's also going to Steam and Switch, right? So the other thing that is being speculated on as to why is they're just running into a lot of errors. There have been a number of games apparently recently that were set to launch on the Xbox consoles, and they just could not code out the errors well enough in order to make it a playable situation, so they had to cancel the Xbox version. I mean, mostly indie games, but still, cancel the Xbox version while still moving forward with the PC, PlayStation, and or Steam versions, or Switch rather, versions. So just an interesting situation. Hopefully it actually comes to fruition, because this would not be the first time that somebody has said a port is happening and then the port just kind of gets forgotten about. So I'm hopeful, though again, I am going to be picking these games up for my Switch and not for my Xbox. Just seems more appropriate that way for some reason. That's what we got for follow-ups and corrections. Let's now get into some regular ass news. No trailers this week to speak of, but we do have some regular ass news. So first up is Concord. If you don't know what Concord is, because we didn't cover it here on the channel, you're not missing anything. It was a hero shooter. It existed for 2 weeks and is now dead. As of Friday, it is now dead. So PlayStation has announced on the official PlayStation blog that all versions of this game, so the PlayStation 5 as well as the Steam versions of this game, will be dead come Friday, which it doesn't sound like many people are going to mind, because the peak of the concurrent players that they had on Steam, so this doesn't include the PlayStation players, but on Steam, the peak number of concurrent players they had was 697. They didn't even break 1,000. Other estimates for other business that are doing puts the total number of sold units at approximately 22,000 sold units. So that's both platforms. 22,000 people bought this, which means if there's only about 1,000 of those 22,000 playing at any one given time, it's going to be very hard to find people to play against. So that's one of the issues. Also, it was a little DEI situation. I didn't play it. I don't know that for explicit certainty, but that is the picture that has been painted for me by other people who have played it and paid a little bit more attention to it, because it's another hero shooter. Like, we already have Overwatch, we already have Apex, not Apex, I'm sorry, I was thinking of Splitgate. Apex is also a hero shooter. We have Overwatch, we have Apex, we have X-Defiant, which isn't exactly a hero shooter, and actually there's going to be news there as well, but still kind of serves a similar purpose to a hero shooter. It's technically an arena shooter, but whatever. And then, I mean, there's just a list of these hero shooters, and it's just another one in the landscape, and it was adding nothing new to the conversation. At least the other ones have something that sets them apart from the pack. It doesn't sound like Concord really had that, so no love lost there. That's what we got for that one, though. Let's move right along. Technically, we have two different Elon Musk X situations to talk about, so we're going to probably roll those kind of together. We'll see how this plays out, though. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants, baby. I don't know what to tell you. So first up is the Brazil situation. There has been a development on this. We did not cover this last week. I wasn't sure if we were going to cover it, because I kind of assumed it was going to die out fairly quickly, because it seems like the situation should be playing to the favor of X, Elon Musk, if you will. But it doesn't seem to be going that way. So the real quick TLDR of what is going on with Brazil, a A judge, a Supreme Court judge in the country of Brazil, has made it illegal to use the platform of X. The reason for doing so is because X allows people to say things that the Brazilian government disagrees with, and therefore they quantify that as fake news or harmful, etc., etc., etc. So because the platform of X will not take down these posts or will not ban these people from the platform, then the country of Brazil has decided, well, this Supreme Court judge in the country of Brazil has decided that now the platform of X is illegal and has put in place fines. You have a daily fine of approximately $9,000 US, which is very close to the yearly GDP, yearly average money made by the average citizen in the city, good Lord, in the country of Brazil. $9,000 US is the pretty close. It's not the number, but it's very, very close. So you're risking a year's salary by accessing X through a VPN. Now that is illegal, through a VPN for just a single day. So there's that. That is the situation. And then when that wasn't enough, the country of Brazil went after Starlink, another company that is owned by Elon Musk. And so what they said to Starlink was, either you deny access to Brazilian users of your service, you deny access to the X platform, or we're going to freeze your assets in this country. And so once again, Elon and company said, no, you can't do that. And then they did. So Brazil then froze all of the Brazilian assets belonging to Starlink and X as much as they could inside of the country of Brazil until Starlink agreed to comply. So the development here, since all of that has gone down, because that's been roughly the last week's worth of situation. So since all of that has gone down, it was made known this morning, I believe, by one of the upper ups in management that they were going to, not X, I'm sorry, the Starlink. Starlink upper management has made it known that they are going to comply with the Brazilian mandate, at least until they work through the legal case, because they are filing suit against the country of Brazil. But while that is being wrapped up in red tape, they're going to allow access to the internet for their users, because they're not dumb in the end. They do still recognize that there is more to the internet than just X, and they have a lot of clients in the country of Brazil who don't have internet otherwise, so they're going to make the money they can from those clients while they fight this in court. So that is the new situation here. When things develop out of this, we will be talking about it some more, but that's all we've got for that one. Moving over to a different side of X, we now have an announcement that was teased earlier in the year, but now we are seeing the beta of this roll out. There is going to be a TV app for X, much like there is for YouTube. Rumble is still working on it, but hopefully theirs comes up soon. But you've got YouTube, you've got Twitch. I don't know any other video platforms offhand, but you've got those two TV apps. So now X is trying to throw their hat in the ring. They are, like I said, currently in beta testing for it. The platforms that have the beta option are Amazon Fire TV dongles, Google TVs, and very few LG panel TVs, all in their app stores now have the X app that you can download to your TV, effectively, to your situation, and bring it up like it's YouTube. There have been a lot of mixed situations as far as the beta goes, but it is definitely still beta. It seems like there was, I haven't been able to find the video. Hopefully by the time I'm editing this, I will have found the video, but it seems that there was a video associated with the announcement that they're going into beta that made the situation look one way, so much more video app oriented, much like YouTube. And then the actual use case of the video app, the XTV app, looked very, very different. And as it stands right now, the only things you can access through the X video app, XTV app, is what is the term that they use? The sponsored shows, I believe is the way. It's an officially licensed X show. So Tucker Carlson, Don Lemon was supposed to get one, but apparently that one fell through. I thought it was still happening, but I guess not. Tulsi Gabbard has a show. There's very few actual like X affiliated shows that you would have access to through this. The announcement though did say that we are currently in beta. We hope to be rolling this out to many other platforms. So I presume Xbox, PlayStation, etc., and Android in general. There was one of the sources for this did say that there was access on certain Android platforms, but I was unable to substantiate that claim. So very possibly if you have an Android device of some sort hooked up to your TV, probably not your phone, but a TV device that is powered by Android, there is a possibility you will have access to the beta as well. But again, I was unable to substantiate that properly. So the XTV is apparently a thing. Hopefully this gets, all of the bugs get worked out quickly, because another alternative to YouTube would be a good thing, especially one that already has a built-in client base that rivals that of YouTube across the world. Like this is going to create, it's only going to be a net positive for users in the end. I cannot see this being necessarily a bad thing. And then once Rumble finally figures out how to get their platform onto on TV situations, platforms, that's the word I was looking for. Once they get their social media video platform onto TV players, then it's just going to be a much better situation overall. It'll make YouTube innovate again, and they won't just rest on the fact that they are the biggest thing in the game and nobody else can compete. When you have X, which is arguably close to, if not as big in certain areas, giving them a run for their money, and then hopefully drawing in more people so that then they have to find a way to draw people back to YouTube by innovating. And that is the way a free market works, is you have rival companies doing similar things, and this company wants to innovate more and make it better for their users so they stick around, and then this company wants to innovate more and make it better for the users that left to go to the other platform, etc., back and forth, and wonderful things for users in the end. Anyway, so yeah, X going to be happening, not fully rolled out yet. Lots of bugs, it sounds like, so we'll see where that goes. From there, we're moving over into Instagram. Instagram has announced that they're going to be allowing comments on stories. So the ever evaporating stories format is now going to be getting comments proper. Instead of sending a DM in order to respond to a story, you can now leave a comment directly onto a story with some caveats. So the caveats are, anyone can see the comments left on a story. However, in order to actually leave a comment on a story, you must be mutually friended with the person who created the story. So if the two of you are following one another, kind of like Twitter, where you can message direct back and forth if you're both following each other, then on Instagram, if you are both following each other, then you can leave a comment on the story. So I don't know why this wasn't already a thing, but it is now, so cool. Okay, moving on. Oh, this one's pretty interesting. GameStop. This one's a little bit more meta in the gaming side of things. GameStop is currently trying to combat the current state of the industry, in that game producers are trying to push everyone to digital, console developers, publishing houses, etc., which leaves the retail side of things looking for something to do. And that's something that they're pivoting towards now, at least GameStop. There are like other franchise stores that do this, but they're all very small franchise stores. I know there's one very close here to me that I spend entirely too much money at. Either way, GameStop is pivoting. They have taken a small list of their stores, a small list, fairly sizable by comparison, list of their stores, and making them into what they're calling GameStop retro stores. The retro pivot is going to go all the way back to OG NES. So if you're looking for NES stuff, eventually GameStop will have some sort of options for you. They have said that they plan on carrying consoles for all previous generations, as well as physical game discs and cartridges, etc., for anything that they can get their hands on effectively. which is a boon, on paper at least, is a boon for the retro gaming communities. It seems like the pivot is not going super smoothly. If you watch the Spawn Wave video on it, he definitely has a little bit of trepidation from the situation, but in the end, I think it's a positive recognition of the potential for this situation, even if it's not being executed very well. There is a list, if you go to the link down in the description, there is a list of all of the stores that GameStop has already made this pivot in, and I would imagine if this pivot works out well over a given amount of time, then they will transition more stores into GameStop Retro. I don't know if they'll do all of them, but I mean, if everyone's moving to digital only, then they're gonna kind of be forced to do that, right? So yeah, go check out the link in the description if you are interested in finding a store near you, because there probably is at least one store near you, so go check it out. Next piece on the list of regular ass news is Astrobot. Just a real quick reminder, Astrobot launches Friday, and the game has already leaked. So if you can't wait to get your hands on it, I'm sure you can find a way to get your hands on the leak, because apparently nothing is sacred these days. Sony is still very much hyping up the game. You can see Astrobot everywhere. If you go to the Concord website, you know, that game that we talked about at the beginning of this section that was canceled, that is being shut down by Friday. If you go to the Concord website, you see Astrobot there. So they're really doing a lot to hype this game up. So hopefully it doesn't fail too. And then our last piece of regular ass news for this episode for gaming and tech has to do with, like I said, XDefiant. We're talking about that again. So in spite of it being very well received to begin with, XDefiant is apparently living on borrowed time right now. They are, I'm gonna say this, and I know somebody's gonna correct me because I'm gonna say it wrong, but either they just started season 3 or they're about to start season 3. But either way, season 3 is the big line that they have to meet. So if they don't get their concurrent numbers up by the end of season 3, then Ubisoft has said they are going to be pulling support for the game. So you have however long an XDefiant season goes, very probably, to play it, because I don't know that they're going to be able to pull this one out. I think a big part of this, because like I said, it was well received with the initial announcement and then the beta and then the early rollout. Everyone was super hype about this because there was the potential. They had this roadmap in place that had all of the things that they're going to be launching with. And I think people thought that those things were going to be executed maybe a little bit better. I know that when I've played, I still enjoyed it, but like, it's just another Call of Duty style shooter, right? I said previously that it's kind of a hero shooter in that you have the different factions, and the different factions have their own abilities, kind of like a hero shooter. Each hero has different abilities, similar in that respect. But what I was hoping for, and I think what a lot of people were hoping for, was when they made the comparison, when Echelon, the Echelon faction released, they made the comparison to Splinter Cell. And so the hope was there was going to be some game modes that also resembled Splinter Cell. And that's not what we got. So if you were looking for some spies versus mercenaries action, yeah, they're still working on it, maybe. I don't know. This is just another example of the money people saying, well, this did well previously, let's just do something that looks like that and go forward. Not fully understanding what made the previous thing do well, what made that so special. So like Chaos Theory, Pandora Tomorrow, Splinter Cell, the multiplayer in those games, I've said it a number of times at this point on the channel, those were fantastic. You had, it was an asymmetrical multiplayer shooter. The mercenaries, if I'm remembering this correctly, and I could have it backwards, mercenaries was 2 mercenaries and was 3 spies. Mercenaries played as the mercenaries played as an SPF. The spies played as a third person, like stealth tactical espionage situation. So kind of like a Metal Gear Splinter Cell thing. And the point of the mercenaries was to protect the data, and then the point of the spies was to steal the data. It was a hell of a lot of fun. Yes, if you got into a room where somebody really knew what the hell they were doing, they spent way too much time on it because it was a little broken as far as like the skill-based matchmaking, which apparently people have an issue with, but that's a whole other video. So it was a little bit broken as far as like the matchmaking goes, because I definitely remember getting put into rooms with dudes who were mercenary or who were spies who probably could have won the 1-on-2 or even 1-on-3 because they just knew that character, that play style so well. And then vice versa. There were some times where it was like, these mercenaries are literally all over the map and there's only 2 of them, so I don't even know how that's possible. Either way, I'm rambling again. It's not what we got with X-Defiant. So X-Defiant's very likely on its last legs, and I mean, once season 3 rolls into it, we'll probably follow up a little bit then, and then by the time season 3 ends, we will definitely have something to say on the X-Defiant situation. That being said, that is what we got this week for regular ass news. Let's get into our suggestion for the week. Suggestion this week is Fallout 76. Like I said, I'm planning on picking it up again this weekend just because I want to check out this balance patch. It's been a while since I played. It is on Games Pass, so you get to play it for free if you're an Xbox player. Yeah, go check it out, man. If you are a fan, it launched broken. It definitely still carries some of the stigma of the launch with it. But from my understanding, and the last time I played it, it was very much playable and very much working very well. So yeah, go give 76 a bit of a shot. That's your suggestion for the week. Comic Books and Books, another short and sweet section this week like it was last week. Only one thing to talk about. It is the new Ultimates universe. We're talking a little bit of Doctor Doom, getting ready for whatever the hell they're about to do in the MCU. So let's talk about the comic books before it hits the movies. Oh boy, so no follow-ups, no trailers, not much for comic books this week. We do have, though, a piece of regular-ass news. We have the Ultimates. The new Ultimates universe is giving us a little bit more on who this version of Doom is. So I guess kind of spoilers, but at this point, if you're reading the Ultimates universe, then you already know at least a bit of the biggest part of this anyway. And if you're not reading the Ultimates, then you probably don't much care. So take with that what you will. But we are getting a little bit more of a backstory on this version of Doctor Doom as Reed Richards. It's Reed Richards as Doctor Doom. Like this, I think that's every time they've done this in the comic books, it's an interesting situation just because the two of the biggest brains, maybe not the 2 biggest brains, but 2 of the biggest brains in the MCU merging effectively into one character is just an interesting thing to see. This is another interesting moral dilemma. So again, I'm not actively reading this arc, so somebody's going to probably take issue with my take on this because I don't know how good or not good it is. But on paper, the interesting bit of this is in this story, in Ultimates number 4, I believe is the issue that they're going to go into this, is you see Reed as Doctor Doom, who is living his life under the thumb of the Watcher. Or the Watcher, is that how it goes? But I did not write it down, so never mind. But either way, this version of Reed, who has lived an oppressed life, who has not had the opportunity to go out and be exposed to the gamma radiation that then makes him into Mr. Fantastic. He instead was turned into Doctor Doom. And he keeps getting visions of the life that could have been. So the interesting philosophical situation is he wants the life that could have been, even though he is stuck in the life that is. And so he wants to force the life that could have been to happen. So motivation for a villain, perhaps? Like, as it stands right now, he is fighting on the side of Iron Man and company. So like, he is ostensibly a good guy. He is Reed Richards after all, but he is also Doctor Doom. So like, really interesting dichotomy of motivations, because Reed is just inherently driven to be good and Doctor Doom is inherently driven to do the things he wants. Not necessarily good or bad, just more self-motivated rather than motivated for things outside of the self. And having that dilemma inside of one character on paper sounds like a good philosophical delve, like a good way to get into this philosophy of motivations and what makes a bad guy, and etc., etc. I hope they're doing a good job with this, but again, I'm not reading it. I just don't have the comic book time these days, and I wish I did. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with that one. Let me know what you think. If you're reading it, let me know what you think of the current arc. If you are pro or anti or whatever, I just really want to hear your take on that one. So that's what we got for regular ass news. Let's get into suggestion. This week, our suggestion, speaking of Ultimates, is the original Ultimate Universe. Starting in 2009, Ultimate X-Men number 1 is a really cool reimagining by Mark Millar and company. Really cool reimagining of the X-Men universe. The one thing that I think really sets the Ultimate Universe apart from the main universe is that death is permanent in the Ultimate Universe. So it was kind of doomed to fail eventually anyway, because it's just not how we accept comic books as working these days. But I think it's a really cool concept, and it's really well written. Mark Millar just does really good work. He's one of my favorite writers overall, and it's definitely worth a read. So go check out you can get it in omnibus, you can get it in the trades, you can get it in individual floppies if you're lucky. But either way, check out the original Ultimates universe starting in 2009. However you got to do that. That's your suggestion for the week. In TV streaming, we've got another trailer for Yellowstone, the second half of season 5. CW show is getting a reboot treatment from Netflix. Plus, George R.R. Martin admits that season 2 of House of the Dragon is flawed. And then we've got a bit more in this one. All right, follow-ups and corrections, TV, streaming. Superman and Lois, real quick follow-up on this one. Superman and Lois, the show that is ending this season, final season changes before the season starts. It was supposed to move up to Monday nights. From Tuesday, it was supposed to go into Monday nights. Now, though, it is moving to Thursday. No, did I get that backwards? I think I got that backwards. I got that backwards. So, moving to Mondays was supposed to go to Thursdays. Is that how I said it? I don't remember. Either way, that is what it is. Moving from Tuesdays to Mondays was supposed to go from Tuesdays to Thursdays. The apparent reason for that is CW is now doing block schedule on Thursday nights called Game Night, where they're going to play Scrabble and Trivial Pursuit and things. Apparently that's something that people want to see on television. I don't know, it just sounds weird. But yeah, so that's the situation with Superman and Lois. It launches on the 7th now. Also, it got bumped up by a week. So instead of it launching on the 17th, it is now launching on the 7th. So that's October. That's the month. I didn't say that before. Anyway, continuing. From there, let's talk about Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. We now have official announcement that season 3 has begun production in Spain, because season 3 is going to take place largely in Spain. Super stoked for that. Season 2 hasn't even begun airing yet, which means we're not going to have to wait as long between seasons this time. Thank you, Jesus. All right, moving along from there. No, that's all we have for follow-ups and corrections. So let's get into trailers that came out this week. We have a new Agatha All Along trailer. Gives us a little bit more of a sneak into what the hell this series is going to be all about. And I still don't think it's going to be doing much in the way of good numbers for Disney+. I think once we get past the current set programs, the things that we know are coming for Disney Marvel, that's when we're going to start to feel the course correction a little bit more that they keep alluding to in the press releases and in the rumors and leaks and stuff. So as it stands right now, Agatha All Along's probably, I don't know if it's going to do as bad as, say, The Acolyte or anything like that, but it's not going to do nearly as good as WandaVision did. So there's that. It does launch, though, September 18th on Disney Plus if you're interested. From there, our other trailer this week is the second half of Yellowstone Season 5. It's been 2 years almost since we got any Yellowstone programming, and it's season break. It was supposed to only last like 3 months, and it went over 2 years. So take with that what you will. But yeah, we finally got November 10th is when we're going to be getting the second half of season 5. Whew, it's going to be an interesting situation. I honestly am excited for it to come to an end, and I'm also excited to see exactly how it ends, because we have some rumors about the potential non-end, if you will, but you're gonna have to wait to the rumor section to get to those. From there, let's get into some regular ass news as far as TV and streaming shows is concerned. First piece here is One Tree Hill. The old CW show is getting an unlikely reboot because the original showrunner producer of that show is largely not a good person. So it was kind of interesting to read this, and then you find out that the actresses who are involved, Sophia Bush and Hillary Burton Morgan and Jensen Ackles, I don't have her name in here. Jensen Ackles' wife, Danielle, there it is, Danielle Ackles, are going to be executive producing this show, among other people, but they're actively involved with it, and they're also going to be in it. I don't know if Danielle is going to be in it much, though she was in the original show for a few episodes, I think maybe like a season or so, but we are going to see, at the very least, the return of, I'm going to not remember the character names, but either way, Sophia Bush and Hillary Burton Morgan are going to be returning to reprise their roles in this show. Anyone else attached to this has not yet been announced. If they are, once the announcements have been made, we'll probably do a follow-up on that. But yeah, One Tree Hill was a bit of my teenage years, so it'll be interesting to see what the hell they do with it. Also, the format has not been officially announced for this because it could go in the way of a proper series reboot where they do multiple seasons and they do like 10 plus episode seasons or something along those lines. Or they could do a Gilmore Girls and just do 4 episodes, do a mini season as it were, and call that a resolution. So once that has been made known, then we'll probably do a follow-up on that as well. From there, let's talk about House of the Dragon, shall we? George R.R. Martin has said on his blog that there were errors in season 2 of House of the Dragon, and that is a lot of clickbait in that title because you're seeing a lot of other news places say almost that exactly, that there were errors is kind of the misgiving statement. What was said in the blog largely is he's finding little continuity issues, like the fact that they went with the logo, the House Targaryen logo that has 4 legs on the dragon instead of 2 legs like it's written in the book. Silly things like that. And then you get to the fact that he acknowledges that it ends at basically the same spot that season 1 ended at, and you go, oh, he knows. He sees it too. Hopefully that means he's going to address it because he is one of the producers on the show. He is also the consultant, being as he wrote the original material. He is hopefully going to be part of the group of people that corrects in season 3. Because I've said it before, I think House of the Dragon has the potential to be better than Game of Thrones proper. Honestly, in a lot of ways, is better than Game of Thrones proper. So you just have a lot more focus because there's a lot less periphery going on. The subplots all tie in very well. You don't have to wait for a subplot from season 1 to tie back into the main plot into season 3. It's all weaving actively at the same time. So I think that goes a long way to keep the fan base interested. But if the actual story you're telling doesn't progress with a regular progression, with a good progression, then you're going to lose people because of that instead of the fact that they can make sense of it. So they are acknowledging that there are issues and they are going to be correcting them in the future, is hopefully the implication they're trying to make, because that is the implication I'm walking away with. But that is what we have for regular ass news in TV streaming. So that brings us into suggestions this week for TV streaming. It is a free streaming suggestion over on Tubi. If you don't have Tubi, you can get Tubi for free, and you should because it's free. Beetlejuice, the animated series, the entire animated series is up on Tubi for free. You can watch it on demand. It's awesome. If you are like me and you have a questionable copy from forever ago on a hard drive or possibly even on disc somewhere because it's never been released as far as I've been able to find, that has, varying qualities of video and varying lengths of episodes because people like to cut them weird, then this is going to be a better opportunity for you to watch this classic cartoon from your childhood. And it seriously holds up. With the movie coming out very, very soon, this week, in fact, I'm super excited to be able to watch the cartoon whenever I want now in great quality. Like I have the cartoon, like I said, it's not the best quality. It's just kind of the only thing you can get your hands on. And now you have it on Tubi, so go watch it. It's available on Tubi for free. Absolutely, that is your suggestion for the week. Movie news this week, we have a Donald Trump biopic that is going to be headed into theaters before the election happens. That's fairly noteworthy. Running Man reboot is about to begin production, and Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead might not be entirely dead after all. Let's talk about all of that. All right, follow-ups and corrections for movies this week. We have a follow-up on the Running Man reboot series. We now know that they're going to begin filming in November. So principal photography will be taking place this November. So we should be seeing it next year, hopefully. Starring once again Glenn Powell. This is going to be a more faithful version of the Stephen King book, whereas the Arnold Schwarzenegger version from the 80s was definitely a serious departure from the book in many, many ways. This one sounds like it's going to be much more in line with what was in the text of the book. It's pretty cool. Moving on. Speaking of going into principal photography, we have Nobody 2, the Bob Odenkirk, John Wick-esque movie that was really fantastic. If you've never watched the first one, you should. Is currently filming the sequel. So Nobody 2 is actively being filmed right now, probably as we speak. No, I'm not gonna lie. That's what we got on that one. Next up is a casting announcement for the Peaky Blinders movie. The Cillian Murphy movie, it just cast Barry Keoghan alongside Cillian Murphy. It's going to be coming to Netflix. No official release date or anything like that. It doesn't appear that they are in active production on it either just yet, but they will be hopefully soon. From there, we have one other follow-up, and this one's super interesting, not gonna lie. Zack Snyder is not dead, or his zombie franchise, at least, is not dead. Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead IP, at least, just opened an escape room in Six Flags in New Jersey. This is an interesting situation because this seems to imply that the Army of the Dead franchise is not completely dead in the water, because they just did something new with it. Now, let's look a little bit deeper into that though, because it just happened, right? They just opened it up. It is an attraction. Do I have it? Yeah, escape room attraction in in Six Flags, again, once in New Jersey. So what this actually more likely is, I mean, there is still possibility that this is good sign for the future of the Army of the Dead franchise for those of us who actually enjoyed that, at least to some degree. But what's more likely is this was already in motion. Netflix made the announcement, was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago at this point, that the franchise was going to be canceled, or maybe it was just Zack Snyder that made the announcement official out to the public, but it was already known behind the scenes at Netflix that Army of the Dead was going to no longer be moving forward. They're not going to get the Army of the Dead franchise universe like they wanted, because very possibly because of the reception of Rebel Moon and then the Rebel Moon director's cut, etc., etc. It just, Zack Snyder seemed to be pulling L after L after L, and now we have an attraction based on his IP. So again, this very much seems like things were already in motion, and you couldn't just, because you've put the money into this, you might as well go forward with it. And it did have enough of a fan base that I'm sure it's going to be some form of attraction once you're there. And what it sounds like is it's basically putting you in the movie. It's putting you in the Las Vegas, the version of Las Vegas that they created for the Army of the Dead movie, and you have to survive. You have to get out of the city, and it looks like a really cool concept, and it's one of those things that I wish happened more often with things like this. But now that the series is canceled, we'll see how long it lasts up there in New Jersey. So that's kind of what we got on that one. That's what we got for follow-ups and corrections as well. So let's roll into trailers this week. We got a new trailer for the Apartment 7A movie, which, if you'll remember, is the Rosemary's Baby prequel movie that's coming to Paramount Plus on September 27th. Julia Garner playing the lead role in this. Julia Garner is once again going to be an active name that we're going to be talking about in the rumor mill for the Fantastic Four situation. Stick around for that. But this does a fair job of attracting you to want to watch this movie. I don't know if it necessarily builds the hype any more than just the fact that it's a prequel for Rosemary's Baby, and that's going to bring in a certain audience anyway. If you're not into horror movies, definitely not into 70s horror movies, I don't know if this is going to do much for you. So check it out. It's worth a watch, but I don't know if you're going to want to watch a movie based off of this. Then we got not a trailer technically, but we got one of the opening scenes for Joker Folie à Deux. This is Harley and Joker having what appears to be their first conversation in the movie. It's very, very brief. It is just under a minute long, so it's not the entire scene as it is. A lot of people are trying to bill it as. It is 55 seconds though, so it's sizable. It's not, and it's the conversation that they're having. It's not, they don't cut away and do trailery things. It is just this little scene between the two of them. So it's really interesting to watch for that reason. And then we got our final trailer this week is Smile 2, the sequel to one of the more, I don't know, well executed is probably a little strong, but still fairly well executed horror movies from the last 5-8 years or so, is getting a sequel. We got the first trailer for it. It looks like more of the same, which is not a bad thing to say in this situation. Definitely keeps up the creep factor pretty good, so go check that one out. This movie drops October 18th, so right in time for Halloween, and that's super exciting. From there, let's talk about some regular ass news. We have one piece of regular ass news. It's kind of sort of two pieces all at once, and it has to do with Donald Trump, both of them. So the movie that we're talking about is called The Apprentice. It is going to be Sebastian Stan playing Donald Trump, and it sounds like it's going to be a lot more than just what you're thinking a Hollywood movie about Donald Trump would be, in that it was to some degree funded by organizations that are Trump friendly. So there's going to be at least some accuracy there, but it sounds like the director and the actual people in charge of the movie went in a different direction than maybe they were anticipating when they were getting the funding from Trump supportive outlets. And so one of those outlets, one of the money backers was trying to get this movie, was trying to buy up the rights so that this movie would not be released into theaters. They were unsuccessful, and now it is getting released in the theaters. It's really interesting to note, and this is where the other piece of news comes in. It is really interesting to note that there is a fictionalized story of Donald Trump, which starts, I believe, it made it sound at least like the story itself was going to start in the 80s, so when he started into his fame, if you will. So the story at least starts in the 80s. I don't know if it runs up to him becoming president or anything like that, but that is where it starts. But it's a fictionalized, like it is a biopic, quote unquote, so there are going to be some facts kind of strewn about in there, but it is still a fictionalized version of the Donald Trump story. So a lot of artistic license, I'm sure, is being used in this story. Fictionalized story of Donald Trump is going into theaters before the election happens. And also, this is our second piece, also a documentary, so ostensibly, even though probably not in practice, ostensibly a non-fiction narrative story being told about Kamala Harris is also going to find its way into theaters before the election. Seems a little wonky, don't you think? We're going to tell a fictional story about a person that we don't agree with, and we're going to try and make it look like we're giving you facts about a person that we do agree with, and those two people just so happen to be fighting over the highest office in the land. I think there's just a little bit of bias here, just a little bit. I don't know, but yeah, there was not an official release date just yet. There is the Telluride Movie Festival is currently happening, and that's where all of this kind of shook out for both movies. So once the announcement, the release dates for these two movies are announced, we'll probably be touching on it one more time, and then I don't know if I'm going to waste my time with either of these movies, not going to lie, so we probably won't talk about it much after that. That is, though, what we have for regular ass news this week, which leaves us into suggestions. This is another free suggestion. This one is over on Pluto, and we've talked about it a couple of times. It's been the suggestion a number of times on the channel. Every time it goes up onto a free streamer, I'm probably going to suggest it because it is just that much fun, and that is Johnny Mnemonic. Keanu Reeves back in the 90s was not exactly the first thing you think of when it comes to the word great actor, but this movie kind of benefits from the fact that he's not a great actor, at least not then. And just William Gibson, who wrote the screenplay for this and wrote the original short story that this movie is based on, really was trying to write this as a cheeseball, campy science fiction movie. It just turned out that when the director got his hands on it, he didn't get the joke, and so they went a little more serious than was intended, but I think it still works in its favor. It is still just as campy as you want a ridiculous science fiction, cyberpunk science fiction movie to be, and absolutely just a great chance to turn your brain off and watch some crazy on screen. I love this movie a lot. Like, this is one of the movies that I've seen probably hundreds of times at this point, so it's absolutely one of my favorites. That is your suggestion for the week, Johnny Mnemonic.
That's classified.
And then our final section is the rumor mill. As per usual, we have new evidence that the Silver Surfer situation might not be exactly what we were thinking. Yellowstone series proper might not be ending after season 5, and Josh Brolin might be jumping ship from Marvel to DC. And then we've got a few more things to talk about. So we start off the rumor mill with confirmations and refutations. We actually have one of each this time. The first one is an interesting situation. It's a refutation, but we're refuting something that we actually didn't cover on the channel because it came out and then was squashed between episodes. So we're just getting the aftermath here, as happens from time to time. But there was a rumor that there was going to be a The Batman video game based on the Robert Pattinson version of the character and that whole universe, that whole Matt Reeves universe. Well, it has been made known by James Gunn in no uncertain terms that that is not, in fact, happening. So no, we will not be seeing Robert Pattinson's likeness in a video game representing The Dark Knight anytime soon. That is a little bit of a relief for some of us. And then our confirmation this week, we now have Sigourney Weaver confirming that she is, in fact, going to be in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. She has not said, no, I'm sure she's not allowed to say exactly what part she's playing in said movie, but she has said that she has been cast to play a part in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. So pretty freaking interesting there. I'm pretty sure, I honestly didn't have the time to go back and check what we said initially, but I'm pretty sure that one was favorable. I feel like that one I gave at least more than 50% likely that it was going to be happening. So I was right, I guess. That's what we got though for confirmation refutation. We don't have any new sources this week for old rumors. We only have new rumors. And one of the rumors here is going to be familiar, but not a new source for the same rumor. This is a brand new rumor covering similar ground. So that's gonna be the last one we get to. We'll get to it eventually. Starting things off in this section though, we have Predator Badlands, the sequel to the Predator Prey movie that came out on Hulu. Yes, on Hulu, that did fairly well. The sequel now seems like it's borrowing rather heavily from Star Wars. There was a leak, and leaks are rumors until they are confirmed to be true, because a lot of times people will release things and say, oh, it's a leak, I found this over and it was just laying in the corner at the Disney studios. Yeah, no, that's not how, we wait for confirmation before it becomes anything more than rumor. So the leak says that there was a casting call obtained, and the casting call laid out a very similar situation for the lead actors for this movie. The casting call says, according to the leak, says that they're looking for two women to play the role of two sisters, Tia and Tessa. These two sisters began their lives apart and are taking different sides of a conflict, and that conflict will then put them together, and they will have to be, on the opposite sides and battling each other. It sounds kind of like a certain Star Wars show that just got canceled. So that's weird. I mean, the broad strokes, that's very much the Acolyte, but I'm sure the fine details that we're going to be getting in here is what's going to really set it apart. I mean, maybe they want to try their hand at telling a better version of that story, hopefully. But yeah, as it stands right now, like this sounds like it was sourced appropriately, and I'm honestly going to be giving this as kind of a benefit of the doubt just because it seems like something Disney might be trying to do right now. So we're going to say it because Disney owns Fox, who owns Predator, and Hulu is where this is probably going to go. It's 80% likely that this is the situation. I will be very surprised if at the very least we don't get these super broad strokes. Again, the finer details, that the leak definitely goes into greater detail than I just gave you, but if you want to go find it, do that, that's fine. But really the takeaway from this is broad strokes, this sounds like the Acolyte. It's not going to end up that way, but if those broad strokes aren't there, I'll be very, very surprised. Next up, we have Fantastic Four. This is the one I think that is going to give the most nerd hope this episode. Fantastic Four, there has been a couple of leaked images from the set of Fantastic Four. No, we're not talking about the Ben Grimm images. There's a situation there. I wanted to cover it, but I honestly couldn't find the image literally until like yesterday that everyone was talking about. I found a couple of blurred out ones, but that's not going to do anyone any good. Either way, there's Ben Grimm pictures on set that look really cool. Definitely look like they're going to be adding to a suit. So there's going to be a mix of practical and digital effects to make Ben Grimm come to life, and I'm super excited about that. It's not what we're talking about though. What we are talking about is Nova. Frankie Ray, as played by Julia Garner, we know that is happening. But the previous leak has said, and this is all but confirmed by the trades. And remember, we've talked in the past about the fact that when the trades cover it, it's basically a confirmation of the thing being true. But they still get things wrong. And I think that is the situation that we've got here, because the image, though again, very, very blurry, you should be seeing it on your screen right about now. The image appears to show us Julia Garner as Frankie Ray. If you remember, Frankie Ray was a Nova in the comic books, and then at one point also became Silver Surfer, who was the Herald for Galactus. The other role that Frankie Ray served, or there was another time, I guess I should reword that. The other time that Frankie Ray served as the Herald of Galactus, she was Frankie Ray Nova, which is a different character than Silver Surfer. There's different aspects to that character that seem to be represented in this picture. Again, super freaking blurry because it was probably shot from like 2 miles away or something. So, you know, they had to blow it up a million times, and so you can't really make out details. But it definitely does imply that we're going to be seeing Frankie Ray Nova as the Herald for Galactus, and not Frankie Ray Silver Surfer as the Herald for Galactus, which is slightly more what the expectation would be for this movie. Because in the comic books, Frankie Ray as Herald for Galactus was only Silver Surfer for one very short arc, but was Herald for Galactus as Nova for much longer. And so if you're doing Silver Surfer, the fandom is going to expect Norrin Radd and not Frankie Ray. So this could be going a long way in restoring some faith in this movie for the fan base. The likelihood that this is the situation, I think, is slim, but still positive. So we're going to say about 65%, because the sources that have sourced this have a decent track record, but also the image seems, again, very blurry image, but still seems to imply this thing. So, I mean, if you're playing with colors, that's the big implication here, is you have a lot of orange where there should be silver if, you know, Surfer and whatnot. So again, 65% likely that we're seeing Frankie Ray Nova and not Frankie Ray Silver Surfer. From there, we have Yellowstone, a Yellowstone rumor that we need to address. There seems to be an implication that the current, and take that back a little bit, there was an announcement that season 5 would be the end of what we know of as Yellowstone, and then we're going to just have all of these spin-off shows, which the Madison is going to be the proper sequel series to the Yellowstone series proper. Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser, who play Beth and Rip respectively, are now in negotiations to continue the mainline story without Kevin Costner. They'll just shift the focus to Beth and Rip, and you know, Kevin Costner will be gone, and I can't remember the actor who plays the other brother, or the two brothers. I can't remember either of those actors right now, but presumably the one brother will stick around in the periphery, and then the other brother will probably be dead by the end of season 5. I'm not gonna lie, there's a very strong chance that she's gonna kill her stepbrother. Anyway, so it seems that they are not going to be part of the Madison, at least not as recurring roles or as any sort of supporting cast. The rumor is that they're going to be continuing the mainline story into a 6th season at least. This seems very possible. I think that Taylor Sheridan realizes that this is kind of a money printing machine, Yellowstone, and Paramount Plus also is like, I mean, you're selling a lot of subscriptions for us because this is one of the highest rated and arguably best shows in live action right now. Let's find a way to continue it. So if we can't get Kevin Costner to come back, then maybe we can shift it over to one of the kids. And that seems the way it's going. So we're gonna say 75% likely we will see a Kevin Costner-less season 6 for Yellowstone. Let's move on now into the Green Lantern. Green Lantern, big rumor here, with questionable sources, big rumor here is that Josh Brolin is going to be cast as Hal Jordan in the DCU version of the Green Lantern, or Lanterns, if you will, the series that's supposed to be going to Max. I mean, there's really nothing to support this aside from the quote-unquote rumor monger who is talking about it. Josh Brolin has a lot on his plate. You've got Outer Range, you've got potentially coming back as Thanos, which wouldn't be a huge undertaking because it would largely be voice work, which you could knock out in a day or two. And beyond, I mean, he could come back as Cable as well. There's also that possibility, but what's the likelihood that he's going to be coming back for an extended amount of time to the MCU for either of those? He does, though, like I said, have Outer Range on his plate. He has a couple other projects that I believe on his plate. So it seems unlikely, and then you get into the sourcing for this one and it becomes much more unlikely that he is going to be cast in the DCU for really anything in the first few outings that they go, because you can't say movies because they're doing shows too, but first few outings they're going to cast him in anything, if they go with him for anything at all, because at this point Brolin's a little bit older, which I think is where this rumor is coming from, because Hal Jordan in the Lanterns series is being billed as an older, more grizzled veteran of the Force who's training different, I believe it was Jon Stewart is the other Lantern that they're going with for Lanterns. So we're gonna say about 50% likely here, because there is, I think, enough on the other side to say yes. I just don't think it's enough to outweigh entirely really anything on the no side of things. So we're gonna split the difference and say about 50% likely. And then we have, kind of related to that, we have a Booster Gold rumor saying that Kumail Nanjiani has been cast for Booster Gold. I honestly, this one sounded familiar, so it's entirely possible we've talked about it before on the rumor mill, so we're not going to spend too much time here. Kind of the similar thing, though Kumail Nanjiani has less on his plate these days. Also, we're never going to see anything from the Eternals again, so the likelihood of him coming back to the MCU seems pretty slim. So theoretically, I could go higher on this one, but the source is just bad. It's just a bad source. So 50% likely for Kumail Nanjiani to play Booster Gold in the DCU as well. And then we have another big Mortal Kombat leak. Oh boy. Oh, there's so much to these too. Like, it's like they're just shoving as much garbage out there to see if any of it lands. So we're gonna break this one down like we did the one from last week. We're going to go through the individual elements of this rumor a little bit more individually than we did last week, just because this technically comes from the same source as last week, so that already kind of kills a lot of this, but some of it is repeating. We'll get into it. All right, so Mortal Kombat 1, we have a new leak suggesting that Combat Pack 3, again, that's the big thing that everybody's talking about because by and large, Combat Pack 2 is known at this point. So Combat Pack 3, the rumor this time is it's going to be larger. It's going to be, in fact, 8 characters, so 4 Mortal Kombat characters and 4 guest characters, plus another 3, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 also cameo characters are going to launch. It's featuring the first guest cameo character. We'll get to all that. So this leak suggests that the 4 Mortal Kombat characters are going to be Kabal, Jade, Scarlet, and Blaze. So those 4 characters. All right, so right out the gate, we already know 4 and 4 is not how NetherRealm has done things in the past. This is very not likely that they're going to start doing it that way in the future. Honestly, the more likely option, if they really wanted to sell this as a legitimate leak, quote unquote, would be if they cut it back somehow. If they scaled back 2 and 2, but 4 and 4 is excessive. So right out the gate, we already know that this person's not playing with a full deck. But so Kabal, Jade, Scarlet, and Blaze. Kabal, there is no implication. I don't even know if there is really any reference to Kabal in the game, even a passing reference, or like if there's a reference to Nightwolf and Aaron Black in the Test Your Might situation, where if you mess up your Test Your Might and you die, because it's how they do it in this game, then you potentially could get a green arrow ostensibly from Nightwolf, or you could get shot, and there's a comment made by the voice actor who did Aaron Black. So there are references to Nightwolf and Aaron Black. There is nothing like that for Kabal. So for them to bring him in as a fully playable character is somebody's fan fiction. We're going to say 10% likely that Kabal is going to find his way into Mortal Kombat 1. At least for Combat Pack 3. Should they continue to support this game like they keep saying they're going to, that definitely leaves the door open in Combat Pack 4, should such a thing exist, that it will happen, but as it stands right now, 10% likely we're looking at it for 3. And then Jade is one that has been data mined a number of times at this point. She's actively referenced in the game. We talked about her last week. I will be very surprised if we don't get a version of Jade in this game by the time Combat Pack 3 rolls around, because I do believe we will at least get a 3rd Combat Pack for Mortal Kombat 1. So 90% likely we will be seeing Jade there. Scarlet is an interesting situation. Over the weekend, I definitely saw a render for Scarlet that I thought was an in-game render for Mortal Kombat 1, which looked really good. It was just a fan-made render, though, that somebody was posting for, they wanted to do the ninjas, and so they did Scarlet, Melina, and Katana together, and it's really cool. I'll see if I can find the image and put it up on screen so you know what I'm talking about. But again, this is another situation where there's no passing references to Scarlet, there's no active references to Scarlet, there's no reason to believe that Scarlet has anything to do with this story, at least as it stands right now. Theoretically, could the Chaos Reigns DLC open that door up? Sure, but we already know she's not going to be part of Combat Pack 2, which is going to be Chaos Reigns. So Combat Pack 3, this is super, super heavily dependent on advancing the story to a point where Scarlet makes sense, and then yeah, we might see her. So there's a lot going against this, and again, because there's no passing references to this character, we're going to say about 30% likely that Scarlet's going to be in it. It's not super likely, but there is still a slim chance. And then Blaze. Oh, Blaze. No, I just want to say absolutely not. 5% likely that Blaze is going to be in here. Blaze is, from a lore standpoint, Blaze served a purpose for rebooting the franchise. I don't think we're back to that point again in a single game, sorry. Also, I don't know if they're going to, if they will be reintroducing that character into this new timeline, if it's going to be anytime soon, because you really have to play up a lot of elements from the lore in order to make Blaze make sense. Again, theoretically, that could happen with Chaos Reigns. More likely, though, if there is a second story DLC, that is what it's going to take in order to introduce enough elements to make Blaze be a thing in the story. So yeah, there are so many hurdles, and also not a super popular, like, yeah, he's got a little bit of a fan base inside of the Mortal Kombat fan base at large, but a little bit being operative word here. So 5% likely we will be seeing Blaze in Mortal Kombat 1. I really will be very, very surprised if that happens. So from there, let's go into the guest characters that are rumored in this leak. Guest characters. Once again, we have Doom Guy, Ash Williams, Michael Myers, and Fulgore listed as potential guest characters. Fulgore from Killer Instinct. So we'll break these individually as well. We have Doom Guy and Ash Williams are both, I'm going to say both 10%. Not super likely. Ash Williams was a rights thing. That's why we didn't get into Mortal Kombat 11. With that being dead in Mortal Kombat 11, I can't imagine they're going to try and revive Mortal Kombat 1. They're just going to let sleeping dogs lie and go with that. Doom Guy, again, there's a lot of IP issues here. You actively have Microsoft owning id Software, and id Software is who owns the copyright or owns the property for Doom. So in order to get this cross-platform, they're not going to go just have Doom Guy on the Xbox platform. They would want to do it on both platforms, and that's just, again, a rights nightmare. Not bleeding likely that we're going to see Doom Guy as a guest character. Then Michael Myers, I think, is probably the most likely of this list of guests, just because we already have a horror movie theme, so why not continue with that? That's about as much evidence as we can give it, though, because guest characters kind of tend to come out of left field. I'm looking at you, Conan the Barbarian. Jesus, what the hell is that even supposed to be? So 50% likely for Michael Myers, and then we have Fulgore from Killer Instinct. Again, this is a Microsoft-owned property, so in order to get the rights across the board over to PlayStation, just does not seem super likely. I know they've done it in the past with God of War Kratos. With Kratos in the God of War franchise, that was only on the PlayStation 2 that he guested. PlayStation 2? PlayStation 3 maybe? I can't remember. Mortal Kombat 9, either way. He was a guest character and only existed on the PlayStation version of that game. I really don't see that was profitable enough for them to do it going forward, and also, like, they want to cast as broad of a net as possible, so to get something that is so so platform specific seems incredibly unlikely. So we're going to say 10% also for Fulgore. 10% likely that we'll be seeing Fulgore in the Mortal Kombat 1 game. And then let's move into the cameo characters that are being rumored with this quote-unquote leak, and that is Nightwolf, Kotal Khan, Aaron Black, and Chucky, or General Kotal is how the rumor labels him. So Nightwolf, we're going to, again, tackle these individually. Nightwolf, we have reference to Nightwolf, a passing reference at the very least, to Nightwolf in-game already. That's kind of all you really need to justify the cameo situation, I believe. There doesn't need to be a lore reason for it, because the cameos are cameos, technically, in the lore for the game, are cameos from other universes. So that's kind of all you really need. And I believe at this point, like, there has been enough, I can't say substantiated, there has been enough data mine-based rumors that seem to imply this is a possibility, that we're going to give this just a little bit over halfway. We're going to say about 60% likely we'll be seeing Nightwolf in Mortal Kombat 1. And then as far as General Kotal goes, there is very little evidence that this is going to be a thing. Yes, Kotal Khan and Jade in previous games had a relationship. He's no longer the Khan, as Melina is now the ruler for Outworld. So it would be in some sort of general situation with Outworld being a little bit more of a nice place, a little bit more Earth-friendly, if you will. Lore ways that seems to lend itself to this being a possibility. But again, it's a cameo, so that's a lot of work to go into justifying a cameo. There's no other real way they could work that in and have it make sense. But again, cameo, so it's still possible. We're gonna say about 30% likely that Colt will find his way into Mortal Kombat 1. Aaron Black is a similar situation. I feel like, honestly, what I have written here, I don't think is what the actual number we're going with, because I think he's about as likely as Nightwolf. So we're gonna say 60% likely as like we did for Nightwolf, for the exact same reasons, just because all you really need is a passing reference for it to make sense for a cameo in this game to find his way in. And then our final one is Chucky. The interesting thing here is this would be the first time we got a guest character as a cameo. Also, going with that horror theme seems to lend itself that way. This one, the only reason we're not going any higher is really because of the source, because of where this is coming from, and there's no other way to substantiate it. But also, I guess I could have gone a little bit higher because the implication from Ed Boon, I guess it was a couple months ago at this point, when he posted that black and white picture of all the horror icons and had a question mark over Chucky's head, seems to imply the possibility exists. So I guess I could have gone a little bit higher, but we're not going much higher than 50%. I'm gonna split the difference on this one. 50% seems pretty generous on a lot of the stuff that is coming out of this leak specifically. This is the second time that it's been referenced that Chucky could be a thing, but the last time was this same source-ish. Technically it's two different sources, but it's kind of funneled through the one place. He's just claiming it's coming from different places. Does that make sense? So yeah, 50% likely that we'll see Chucky as a cameo. I think that would be fun, especially considering how well Farah is doing in game. But yeah, then we have one last piece to this big Mortal Kombat quote-unquote leak, and it is the existence of a new finisher when it comes to Combat Pack 3. They're going to be launching a new finishing move, and they're going to call it a musicality. Oh, this really brings me back to Mortal Kombat 3 days, when Mortal Kombat 3 was about to launch and all of my friends were speculating about, oh, I heard there was going to be nudalities, or I heard there was going to be this or that or the other thing, because babalities was a thing and friendships was a thing in Mortal Kombat 2. So we were like, well, how are they going to make that better? I think at one point at that time, somebody suggested, maybe it was something I read in a magazine or something, but it was suggested that such a thing as a musicality was going to be a thing then too, which is another reason why I don't think this is going to happen. But just the corny, like, Mortal Kombat is corny. There is a lot of cheese involved with Mortal Kombat. There's definitely a lot of like borderline cringe things that they're doing as jokes in game or in universe that Mortal Kombat fans just kind of accept, and I mean, I appreciate even. But a musicality is not the direction that they take their humor, not the kind of corn that they usually distribute in the Mortal Kombat universe. Also, the description of what a musicality is, according to this leak, is you do it and then your opponent rather dances themselves to death. Literally, just feels a lot more drawn out than it seems they're going with their finishing moves. If you take a look at Takeda and you see his X-ray move, Takeda probably is the last one to launch, has the shortest X-ray in the game as far as like the length of time it takes for the animation to play out, is the shortest from start to finish out of anyone. If you look at, they're leaning a lot more into the brutalities. They're giving us brutalities, very potentially giving us stage fatalities with Combat Pack 2. Like, it just seems like they're going for brevity. The fatalities anymore take up a little bit less time as well. So to properly do something that would imply dancing one's self to death seems like that would be a lot more of a drawn out situation. They're also trying to appeal to the professional, the fighting game community, the tournament fighters, if you will, and that something that is that long and drawn out just does not lend itself to that community either, the professional fighter community. So there's just a lot working against this, and just the cheesy musicality really 5%. This is another one that will honestly shock me if this comes out ever in a Mortal Kombat game. Just ever. If they ever do this, you will see me mouth agape. Like, it's just never gonna happen. 5% likely it will see musicality. That is what we have for the rumor mill this week, nerds. Oh, that was a slog. I'm sorry. And that brings us into housekeeping.
I think you're sleeping.
Housekeeping for this episode. Beetlejuice is launching. We're going to see Beetlejuice this weekend, and it's going to be great. So we'll be talking about that in That Just Happened next week. As far as other things go, we are now 2 months out, a little under, I guess I should say, a little under 2 months away from the off season. So once again, for those that don't know, off season is when I revamp whatever visuals need revamping. I implement certain changes in my process as far as research, record, edit, post, etc. As far as how all that stuff workflow works, I try and implement things to make it go smoother because I am a one-man show, and so that is the only time I have is during, I take ostensibly I take 2 months or so off from doing the regular show, and I call that the off season. And anymore, the off season implies that we're doing a live show because it takes a little bit less research to do a live show, and also a lot less editing. So the show will switch to the live format at the beginning of December, because we usually end the week before Thanksgiving and take about 2 weeks off so that we can celebrate the holiday, and then we come back with a live show in the week or so after Thanksgiving happens. So the beginning of December is when we're going to switch over to the live format. So middle of Thanksgiving is when we stop the show. Like I said, about a little less than 2 months away. So that is where that sits. As far as other housekeeping goes, I don't know that there is anything else to cover. So thank you very much, nerds, for joining me for this episode of the news. If you are falling behind in your nerd news and you want to catch up, don't forget to subscribe so that you can stay up to date, but also check out the playlists of the previous episodes that should be popping up on your screen right about now. I appreciate your faces, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me. Before we go, though, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.